Every gilded cage is built with walls of comfort. The only question is what you're paying for them.
Have you ever just felt like the game is rigged? You know, like the rules were written long before you showed up? Today, we're going to try to see the whole building, not just the room we're in. We're pulling back the curtain on the hidden architecture of control, the invisible systems that are quietly shaping our world.
And this quote, man, it just nails it, right? The real fights aren't the shouting matches you see on TV. They're the silent, subtle shifts happening in the background that decide who gets a seat at the table and who doesn't. It's not about winning an argument, it's about changing the rules of the game itself, usually when no one's looking. So, here's how we're going to break this all down. We're going to use this four-wall model to deconstruct the system. We'll look at the economic wall, the narrative wall, the technological, and the structural walls. And then we'll talk about what it actually means to live inside all of this.
Okay, first things first. What exactly is this invisible architecture? Well, think of it less like a prison with actual bars and more like a conceptual one. A maze built out of ideas, assumptions, and systems that guide our choices without us even realizing it.
See, at the end of the day, real freedom isn't just about not being in chains. It's about self-determination. It's the power to actually choose your own path. And the four walls we're about to walk through, well, they're not separate issues. They're all connected, working together to create this master illusion that chips away at that very freedom.
All right, let's start with the first wall, the one that probably feels the most real to a lot of us, the economic wall. Control and money have always been linked, but the methods have gotten a lot more sophisticated. We've gone from physical chains to the invisible ones woven into modern contracts.
And that brings us to this really provocative idea of wage slavery. I mean, think about it. When your ability to eat, to have a roof over your head, depends entirely on that next paycheck, that dependency becomes this incredibly powerful, unseen form of control. And you can see how this has evolved over time. The methods of coercion changed, right? It went from the brute force and legal ownership of chattel slavery to the debt traps of sharecropping, and now to the simple economic necessity of the 9-to-5. Sure, we have more formal rights and we can technically leave our jobs, but that fundamental dependency, it's still there, and it's still a powerful tool to keep people in line.
And make no mistake, this system has incredibly deep roots. By 1860, the value of enslaved human beings in America was worth more than all the country's factories and railroads combined. It was $14 trillion in today's money. This wasn't some sideline part of the economy, it was the economy. It literally created the blueprint for exploitation that, in many ways, we're still dealing with today.
So if that first wall controls your wallet, this second one is all about controlling your mind. This is the narrative wall. It's built from the stories we're told, and just as importantly, the stories we aren't told, all to get us to agree, to consent, without even knowing it.
The Gulf of Tonkin incident is a perfect, almost textbook case. Back in '64, the public was told there were 2 unprovoked attacks on U.S. ships. That story was used to massively escalate the Vietnam War. But then, decades later, declassified documents came out and, oops, the second attack, it never actually happened. A story was created, sold as fact, and used to justify a war. That's the narrative wall in action.
So you have to ask, why does this work so well? Well, the writer Neil Postman hit on something brilliant. He said modern media, especially TV, is all about the now. It erases the past, it erases context. When every story just appears out of nowhere, fully formed, we can't see the patterns, and that makes us way, way easier to mislead.
And here's the thing, it's not always some shadowy conspiracy. A lot of the time, it's just business. Media companies figured out that nothing sells like outrage. It keeps you clicking, watching, and sharing. In an economy that pays for engagement, not accuracy, the story that makes you the most angry is the one that wins, whether it's true or not.
Now, you take that outrage engine and you pour gasoline on it with our third wall, technology. And we're not just talking about your phone. We're talking about the invisible code running underneath everything, the algorithms designed specifically to watch us and ultimately to shape what we do.
There's a name for this new reality: surveillance capitalism. It's an economic system where your personal data, every single click, every like, every place you go, is the new oil. It's mined, refined, and used to predict what you'll do next. And those predictions, they're sold to the highest bidder. In this system, you're not the customer. You are the product.
So how do they actually get us hooked? It's a simple 4-step loop. It starts with a trigger, maybe a notification or just feeling bored.
That leads to an action. You open the app and start scrolling. Then comes the variable reward. You never know what you're going to see next, and that uncertainty floods your brain with dopamine, just like a slot machine. Finally, you make an investment. You like something, you post something, which just sets up the next trigger. It's a perfectly engineered loop. You're not addicted by accident, you are addicted by design.
And this architecture of control is never finished. It's always evolving. Take central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. The sales pitch is all about convenience, efficiency, helping the unbanked. Sounds great, right? But the critics are sounding the alarm. They see a future where every single purchase you make is tracked by the government, giving them the power to potentially cut off your funds based on your behavior. Okay, for our final wall, we have to look at the foundation that holds all the others up. This is the structural wall. It's all about the unseen frameworks, the institutions, the elite groups, the very way our society is organized, that concentrate power and keep things running in a particular order, usually behind closed doors.
This quote about skull and bones is just brilliant. It says their power doesn't just come from the secrets they keep. The act of being secret is the power. It's a performance. It creates this mystique, this aura of influence that makes them seem more powerful than they might actually be. The secrecy is the tool.
And it's not just one group, of course. You have organizations like the Bilderberg Group, the World Economic Forum, the Council on Foreign Relations. You can think of these as consensus-shaping hubs. They're where the global elite get together, align their goals, and craft the big narratives that then get pushed out through the other three walls we just talked about.
And you know where this structural control begins? It starts early. A lot of us don't realize that the modern public school system is based on the 19th century Prussian model. And the goal of that system wasn't to create free-thinking innovators. Its stated, explicit purpose was to produce obedient, disciplined citizens who would be loyal to the state. And a lot of that DNA, that focus on compliance and standardization, is still with us. So, after looking at these 4 massive walls, it all leads to one big question. What does it mean to actually live inside this thing? Because it feels like we're often stuck in what you could call a gilded cage, forced to choose between comfort and real, actual freedom.
When you look back through history, you basically see 2 major responses to this problem. The first path is all about finding internal freedom. It's the Stoic idea. You can't control the world outside, but you can always control your own mind, your own reactions. The second path is systemic resistance. This is the Marxist view that says internal peace is nice, but it's not enough. The external structures themselves are the problem, and they have to be challenged and dismantled.
This last quote is frankly a little chilling. It's a warning about how easily we give up. Comfort becomes its own trap. We start trading what we truly want for what we can tolerate. And that small, subtle shift in the question we ask ourselves from, what do I want, to, can I live with this? That's the exact moment they've got you.
So, we have to end it here. Look, the whole point of this wasn't to hand you a bunch of answers. It was to give you a lens, a blueprint of the system. Because you can't navigate a maze until you can actually see the walls. And now that you can see the architecture, the final question isn't mine to answer. It's yours. What is your role within it?